Hello, and welcome to Paul Britt's Coach's Corner. I'm Paul Britt, and this is my Coach's Corner. Before we go any further, I'd like to mention our sponsors. 8 is greater than 80. Those who know will know. Integrated Media. They're really doing their thing here. And last but not least, It Ain't Easy Clothing, because it ain't easy. Now, what we're going to talk about today on Paul Britt's Coach's Corner is it's really just one matchup that I'm really interested in this week, and that's the Baltimore Ravens against the Intramural Football Club of Washington, D.C. They don't deserve to be mentioned. No mascot necessary. Let's get right to it. We're going to talk about the matchups of that game, and also we're going to talk about the great Saints. The great Saints. All right, matchups. Before we get into the matchups, I believe someone has been watching Paul Britt's Coach's Corner. Some strange things are happening within the organization. Justin Forsett's been cut. Been preaching it for weeks. I'm sorry I mentioned his name. We're going to say that guy who will remain nameless, who wears number 29. We're going to call him that, who was cut and then re-signed, and now he's been cut again. I've been preaching to play the boy Terrence West. He's hungry. He may have had some immaturity problems in Cleveland before he came to Baltimore. He also had he just didn't perform well in Cleveland. But then again, who does perform well in Cleveland? It's a hard luck city. Also, Michael Pierce Jr. Someone's listening to Paul Britt at Paul Britt's Coach's Corner. Michael Pierce Jr. has been playing getting a lot more reps, and the young man's beasting. He's hungry, unlike those other fat cats on that team who already have their checks. This boy is playing. He wants to play. Let's talk about those matchups of this game that we were discussing. Fraudway Joe against Kirk Cousins. It's difficult to call because you have Fraudway Joe, who's a fraud. You have Kirk Cousins, who shouldn't be a starter on any NFL team, maybe second or third stringer. Smart kid on the dumb row. Who's going to be the smart kid on the dumb row? I project, it's a good question. I have no projection for that because Joe has a tendency to play to the competition. We found out last week when he plays against a team that's going to really go after him, he'll fold like an accordion. Then you have Kirk Cousins, again, who couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with a beach ball. I'm going to go with Joe Flacco on this matchup, though, because he has superior weapons. He has Mike Wallace, who can now stretch the field. He has Steve Smith coming and beasting. He has a great tight end core, and he has a presence at the running back position, which should alleviate a little stress on that offensive line. Let's talk about Fraudway Joe against the defensive backfield of the Intramural Football Club of Washington, D.C. Again, Fraudway Joe should have the advantage, but Fraudway Joe being Fraudway Joe, and I'm starting to believe that he's colorblind because he never seems to throw the ball to the correct color. D'Angelo Hall should not be playing safety for anyone. Josh Norman gets drug tested after football games immediately. Brashad Breeland is probably still punch drunk from week 1, and he's going against some veteran receivers, some great route runners. If Fraudway Joe, the brainless machine gun arm, can just get it together for a few plays, it could be some big things going on for the Ravens. I picked the Ravens in that matchup. I picked Fraudway Joe over that inept defensive backfield. Let's talk about Kirk Cousins against the Ravens defensive backfield. Kirk Cousins is ungood as a football starter, as I'm reiterating. But he's going against the Ravens defensive backfield. We don't have very much of a pass rush, so he's going to be able to throw the ball, but I'm still confident that Jimmy Smith alone will be able to sort of cut off one side of the field, and we should be able to rotate coverage to the other side to help Sharice Wright, Jimmy's high school teammate. That doesn't make Sharice Wright a great ball player, but he's going to do well. He's going to do well because he's going to have a lot of coverage. Ladarius Webb, who should have been released weeks ago, will probably shine in this game because he has a second-rate quarterback throwing the ball at him. I predict a pickoff from either Ladarius Webb or Sharice Wright. He's going to lay one up, or maybe a linebacker falling in the hook zone. Kirk Cousins is going to lay one up for him. He's going to lay a nice egg, and it may even be a pick six. That's my prediction. So my prediction, Ravens defensive backfield is much better than what Cousins can do on their offense. Coaching, Jay Gruden against John Harbaugh. Who will be the smart kid on the dumb row this week? I believe that John Harbaugh will be more successful, even with that collection of clusterfucks. Dean P. Brain, Mark Don't Trust Him Tressman, John Hardboiled, Roswell, who's supposed to be a special teams ace, who's lacking in special teams knowledge. Even with that collection of clusterfucks, is better than what they have in D.C. with Jay Gruden, who only has his job because of his brother, John Gruden, who only has success because of Tony Dungy. Makes no sense. Not going to talk about that anymore. Coaching, John Harbaugh is going to back into this. He's going to back into a victory, coaching-wise, and that's not going to happen very often this football season. My prediction: I predict at least 9 Baltimore Ravens fans being at Sinai's ER at about 4:30 p.m. with heart palpitations and shortness of breath, because the Ravens are going to make this more difficult than what it has to be. I predict 19-16 Ravens. The Ravens will pull this one out. They'll steal it. They'll try to give it away. Joe's going to do his thing. He's going to do his fraud way thing, but they'll pull this one out. Now, let's talk about this. The Saints have a bye this week, but who saw Drew Brees last week, as I stated, steal victory from the jaws of defeat, down by 14 in the fourth quarter, and come back and win the game with the Saints' Swiss cheese defense, no offensive line, no receivers. Drew Brees is taking the ball and he's velcroing it to those receivers that he has. He's doing this all on his own. He is the best quarterback in the league. He's by himself out there. He's doing it all by himself, and he was able to win the game. And again, I'm predicting that the Saints are going to follow suit behind Drew Brees, and they go chugga 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 chugga. That diesel engine starting off slow, and they're going to get behind them. All they have to do is just get a little behind them, and they can run off 6 or 7 straight wins. Next week they play Scam Newton and the Carolina Panthers. I'm predicting an upset that week. New Orleans Saints will win that one. They're going to win that game. Don't know how they're going to do it. Well, I do know how they're going to do it. It's going to be Drew Brees and the Miracles doing that thing. Drew Brees will take them to the promised land. The pearls of Bourbon Street are going to get there. Now, that's all that I have for sports. But on a somber note, I want to mention rest in heaven to a good friend of mine, Jerry Gorham. He passed away 2 o'clock Saturday morning. Great man passed away from an ugly condition, cancer. AAU basketball coach with the Sam Cassell All-Stars and the Bentlow Bombers. Great coach, great man, great everything. Rest in heaven, Jerry. You're a friend. You're still a friend of mine. You'll always be a friend of mine. Much love to you, brother. Much love. That's it for Paul Britt's Coach's Corner. Tune in next week. We're going to have something a little bit more special. Check out the graphics and all those pretenders out there trying to be me. It ain't easy being me. Just watch.